incredible first-person shooter franchise Halo originally started out as a real-time strategy game. The original vision of this series was brought to life in 2009 with the release of Halo Wars on the Xbox 360, developed by the creators of Age of Empires Ensemble Studios. This studio, however, was shut down by Microsoft in 2009 right before the game released, leaving fans with the assumption that they would never get a sequel to Halo Wars. Well, in August of 2015 during Gamescom, Microsoft surprised everyone by announcing Halo Wars 2. The sequel to the fan-loved game would be handled by RTS veterans Creative Assembly and Halo developer 343 Industries. Halo Wars 2 officially released in February of 2017 and has received much post-launch content since. But the teams developing Halo Wars 2 had many obstacles to overcome. So how did Halo Wars 2 happen? This is the making of Halo Wars 2. Halo Wars 2 had a few design problems to conquer during its development. So much had changed in the Halo landscape since the first game released in 2009. Bungie had moved on to its Destiny franchise and no longer makes Halo games. The original developer of Halo Wars, Ensemble Studios, was shut down by Microsoft in 2009. 343 Industries had a few Halo titles under its belt. They had developed Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Halo the Master Chief Collection, and Halos 4 and 5, but were new to RTS game development. It came as a surprise to fans to see that 343 had teamed up with Creative Assembly for development of Halo Wars 2, who are RTS game veterans through their fantastic work at creating the popular Total War series on PC. With this structure in place, the two teams began working on Halo Wars 2 sometime in 2014. Prior to the closure of original Halo Wars developer Ensemble Studios, an initial script was written which explored the history of the Forerunners and involved the Spirit of Fire arriving at a Forerunner station. This script never fully became a reality due to the studio's closure, but 343 Industries explored the idea of creating a sequel to Halo Wars. The studio refrained from developing a sequel until they found a proper studio to collaborate with to make the game of highest quality. Development of Halo Wars 2 officially began in 2014 after 343 approached Creative Assembly to pair up for the project. To prepare themselves for the development of Halo Wars 2, 343 and Creative Assembly played a ton of the first game. I was fortunate enough to have 343 and Creative Assembly answer some questions of the development of Halo Wars 2 for this video. On terms of development, they said, quote, "Becoming experts on the original Halo Wars was a primary goal of early development at Creative Assembly and 343 Industries. First, we wanted to understand the community and how the game was played at a high level. We initially did a deep dive into content which had been posted by top players and analyzed their playstyles and tactics, as well as issues and exploits which had arisen in the years since the launch of the original. Secondly, we played the first game a lot. The team's designers, as part of their setup, were given a retail copy of the original game they could call up at a moment's notice and do side-by-side comparisons of UI elements, features, units, etc. We were making a sequel to a much beloved game, so it was very important we understood the original very well, even the tiny details, both good and bad. However, the most important thing we did to immerse ourselves in the game was to hold a team-wide Halo Wars 2 2v2 tournament called the Phoenix League. This went on for many months as a round robin and everyone on the team competed. We paired very strong players, including people who had been competitive players of the first game, with weaker players to keep things fair, and so that there was an exchange of knowledge. The good players would spend a lot of time coaching the weaker players. Prizes were awarded every week for winning teams, so it quickly became very competitive. Building the competition was important because it forced people to really understand the mechanics, the balance and gameplay decisions that went into the first game, and the nuances of units. In fact, the achievement, "You've Got a Case of the Burley," is named after a particularly hard-fought Phoenix match which ended when one of its developers, Sam Burley, accidentally recycled his main base early in the game. The team recovered though and ended up winning the grand prize at the end of the tournament. Now that the team became familiar with the first Halo Wars, they began work on Halo Wars 2. However, during the planning stages of development, the team decided to also remaster the first Halo Wars and release it for both Xbox One and PC, packaged with all of its original DLC packs. This game was called the Halo Wars Definitive Edition. Halo Wars Definitive Edition was part of the overall development plan for Halo Wars 2 from a very early stage. Because of the time that had passed since the release of the original Halo Wars, we wanted new players to be able to experience it for the first time, and for veteran players to have a great reason to play it again before jumping into Halo Wars 2. The majority of the game did not need to be recoded, but there were a number of important areas we wanted to improve. Increasing the overall visual impact of the game was the most obvious goal, but other major improvements were made in graphic performance, networking and online services, mouse and keyboard UI and controls, and 64-bit support. It had been really exciting to see a whole new generation of players discover Halo Wars and then carry on to Halo Wars 2 and Halo Wars 2 Awakening the Nightmare. This would be the first time that Halo Wars became available for PC and had tons of improvements to both platforms, including graphical enhancements, increased frame rates, bug fixes, better animations, and faster performance at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. As the development of Halo Wars 2 moved along, more information was announced for the game. It would take place over 20 years after the events of the first Halo Wars game. The setting of the game would be on the Ark, the same location where the majority of Halo 3 took place. And to fans' delight, the original cast of characters from the first game would return in the sequel with a few appearance changes, as well as the introduction of new characters. Halo Wars 2 also would not focus on the Prometheans like Halo 4 and 5 would. Instead, Halo Wars 2 players would face off against the Banished, a roguelike Covenant faction, and their leader Atriox. New features were also eventually revealed for Halo Wars 2, including a cooperative card-based playing game called Blitz. In Blitz, you play various cards to create units and drop leader powers on the battlefield to fight and control various capture points on the map. These were some of the important decisions the teams made to help reach the proper balance of implementing new game modes while still catering to the original hardcore audience of Halo Wars. The teams discussed with me some of the challenges they worked through, saying, quote, "What challenges did the team have to overcome during the development of Halo Wars 2? As with every game, there are many challenges during the development of Halo Wars 2, but the first and most important was creating a sequel to a very much beloved game that still has an active following of players. It's very tough to find the right balance between keeping true to the original and doing something new. There was always a strong desire to try and retain as much of what made the original Halo Wars great, but at the same time grow it and make it a more engaging and richer experience than the first game. Ultimately, we wanted the soul of the game to remain intact as we added improvements and new mechanics. Base building was a good example of this. We thought the first game solution was really elegant and worked very well for the controller, but we also recognized that players wanted more choice in how they built their bases and customized their defenses. In the end, we kept the original's design, but added more turret types, an additional resource building type, power, a lot more mini bases across the map, and made sure there were more exciting leader-specific options like mines, the living barrier, Johnson's bunker, Anders' siege cannon spawning sentinels, and of course, the mega turret. Lots of things seemed great for console but bad for PC and vice versa, and we were worried about always taking the path that was good for both platforms. Things like the expanded unit rosters, smart casting, and dual resources we felt were really important for PC, and definitely pushed the sequel beyond the original regardless of platform, but we were worried about the added complexity on a controller. In the end, we made sure we did what was right for the game, and then worked hard to resolve the problems it created. There are still a number of micro-intensive special abilities in the game which can be challenging for players, and which are crucial to high-level play, but there's no denying the game is deeper as a result. From a design perspective, one of the biggest challenges was the total depth of the gameplay. With 16 different leaders, 82 individual units and heroes, and 131 separate leader powers, Halo Wars 2 is one of the most complex real-time strategy games ever created. The number of leaders we envisioned posed a huge challenge, as well as giving them their each personality, gameplay, and unique units. As a result, we ended up really pushing the boundaries of RTS mechanics and explored a lot of scary but exciting designs in order to make every one of them cool and unique. Free units, please don't shoot me, freezing and chill mechanics, Vortis' huge long-lasting infusion zones, and the Arbiter's conduit of range were all huge challenges and mechanics which don't often appear in RTS games. Due to the complexities and gameplay balance risks involved with these new mechanics, it would have been easy to focus our efforts solely on the main game and play it safe with the DLC leaders. But the fact we continue to push and explore new ideas is one of the aspects of the game we're most proud of, and I think resulted in some of the best leaders in the game. An initial beta featuring Versus game modes was released in 2016, allowing fans to finally get their hands on an early build of the game. Fans were quick to notice many new units that were added to the game, with the return of popular units from the first Halo Wars. Halo Wars 2 kept the same rock, paper, scissors format of combat that its predecessor had, where infantry beats air, vehicles beat infantry, and air beats vehicles. Halo Wars 2 also brought more variation in units. Some new units specialized in artillery, cloaking, and healing. Halo Wars 2 also had close to twice the amount of units that the first game had, and is balanced so that no one player can become victorious by making only one type of unit. By having so many units that counter each other, players had to incorporate more strategy into how their armies were to be structured. Following feedback and changes from the first beta, the game was delayed from its initial release of fall 2016 to spring of 2017. A second beta was released in early 2017 that allowed players to try out the new Blitzcard game mode. Halo Wars 2 was announced to release with two editions, the Standard Edition with the base game and the Ultimate Edition, which comes with the base game, a Season Pass, and Halo Wars Definitive Edition, which was priced at $20 higher than the standard version. Many gamers saw this as a great deal and pre-ordered the Ultimate Edition. Included in the Season Pass were 9 new leaders released monthly and an extended campaign experience featuring ODST squads called Operation Spearbreaker. With the 6 initial leaders, the free download of Halo Wars 1 Hero Sergeant Forge, and the 9 DLC leaders, Halo Wars 2 in total had 16 leaders, almost 3 times the amount of leaders found in the first game. Halo Wars 2 released on February 21st, 2017 on both Xbox One and Windows 10 PCs. Halo Wars Definitive Edition was released on December 20th, 2016 on both Xbox One and Windows 10. It made its way to Steam in early 2017. Both Halo Wars Definitive Edition and Halo Wars 2 are Xbox Play Anywhere titles, where players can buy the game once and have access to it on both platforms. However, when the game was released, the Xbox One and PC versions were not cross-platform compatible. 343 Industries have since implemented cross-platform functionality between the two platforms, as well as adding some additional platform-exclusive ranked playlists. Halo Wars 2 was also one of the first games to be enhanced for the Xbox One X with native 4K visuals on console. 4K visuals already supported for both Halo Wars Definitive Edition and Halo Wars 2 on PC. 343 Industries and Creative Assembly announced a major expansion to Halo Wars 2 titled Awakening the Nightmare in summer of 2017 and released in October later that year. This expansion included a new campaign featuring the Banished, new multiplayer maps, 2 new leaders, and a new game mode called Terminus Firefight, where players face endless waves of Banished, UNSC, and Flood units while trying to defend a central objective. Some fans were upset that this expansion was not included in the Season Pass and was an extra cost of $20. But the amount of content in this expansion is massive. A complete edition of Halo Wars 2 was announced at $60 to include both Windows 10 and Xbox One versions of Halo Wars 2, Halo Wars Definitive Edition with all of its DLC, Halo Wars 2 Season Pass, and the Awakening and Nightmare expansion pack. The story is not over for Halo Wars. It has returned and is back bigger and better than ever. While a third entry in the series has not been announced, we do know that it has been pitched before. I made a video detailing the pitch of Halo Wars 3 if you are interested in seeing what was in that pitch. During the process of making this video, I had the wonderful opportunity of asking some questions about the making of Halo Wars 2 to Creative Assembly and 343 Industries directly. Here are some other questions I asked them. Were the DLC leaders planned ahead of time before the game was released? We knew early on that we wanted to add additional leaders after the original 6, though detailed design for those leaders didn't start until later in development, once the team, especially concept artists, designers, etc., had begun wrapping up the content for the main game. Forge was the first to go into production, as he was going to be available at launch, and so really became the extension of the initial 6 leaders. All of the DLC leaders, though, were planned from an early stage, at least a year before launch, to be integrated into the original leaders and to expand and complement the core gameplay. By the time that the first leaders began to release, they had all been in development and in production for many months. An interesting fact about Colony is that very early into Halo Wars 2 development, before the plot, setting, and the Banished faction had been fleshed out, we started thinking about what the original 6 leaders should be, and quickly gravitated towards a hunter-based leader. Hunters are huge, cool, and haven't been explored that much in many of the Halo games, only in the wider lore. Once our key plot characters emerged, Atriox, Decimus, and so on, we pivoted to make sure the original 6 leaders reflected those characters. However, we already thought a lot about how a hunter leader would play and already designed on paper some of the units, like the Skitterer and Goliath. So he was the first choice for a post-launch Banished leader. The idea of a mech-based leader had also been in thought for a little while, and as well as the idea of a big brother to the Mantis. But again, that didn't really fit with Cutter, Isabel, or Anders. Once we started fleshing out how a Johnson leader would play, we brought back some of those ideas. How do you take the feedback of the fans into consideration of the next piece of DLC? The community has played a vital part of the overall game balancing, but for the leader designs, it was difficult to reach directly to player feedback because of the production time required for the new leaders. Each leader took several months of development, including planning, especially for the more ambitious ones, such as Serena and Yap Yap the Destroyer. And once they got near release, their core units and gameplay features were already well established. The main area that we could, and did, react directly to, however, was around gameplay balancing for each leader and identifying bugs which would be addressed for the next update. This feedback was invaluable, especially as new leaders were being completed, tested, and released monthly, while at the same time we were simultaneously making gameplay adjustments to all the previous leaders, including those in the main game. The 2 betas were also very helpful early on, however, and some of the most fundamental gameplay adjustments came from the data and comments that we received during those tests. How was the development split up between 343 and Creative Assembly? Halo Wars 2 was the result of a really close partnership between both studios from the very beginning of the project. Development of the game was done primarily at Creative Assembly, with 343 Industries working closely with them to help guide the overall design, narrative, artistic, and franchise goals of the game. The 2 studios joined creative forces across many areas, but the role of 343 Industries was always focused on working with and supporting Creative Assembly to help them create the best Halo experience possible. It was a very exciting and collaborative effort, and a real pleasure to be a part of creating such a great and evolving game. So, for now, we have 2 fantastic Halo Wars games. The series has tons of new fans and followers. Both Halo Wars games run natively on Windows 10 and Xbox One, with Halo Wars 2 having cross-platform functionality. The games have a team of wonderful, dedicated developers who love the franchise as much as we do. The series is in very good hands moving forward. It appears the real-time strategy game genre is making a glorious comeback, with Microsoft announcing remasters for the beloved Age of Empires, which is related to Halo Wars through the developer of Ensemble Studios. Age of Empires 1, 2, and 3 will be remastered soon, along with a newly announced Age of Empires 4. Will any of these games make it to console through the Xbox Play Anywhere program? Maybe, with the success of Halo Wars, we just might see more great real-time strategy games on Xbox. Regardless, we love Halo Wars, and the people who make it. I'd like to give a special thanks to James Green, Senior Designer at Creative Assembly, and Clay Jensen, Design Director at 343 Industries, for taking some time to answer my questions regarding the making of Halo Wars 2. Without them, this video would not be possible. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our making of Halo Wars 1 video. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Andrew from Team Respawn, and I will see you next time.